Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another First Friday. I hope you are all doing well and looking forward to 2021, where hopefully we will start to see life evolve into a more normal way of getting around and doing things and being able to see and meet with people. So just want to thank you again for joining us here this evening. Now, this evening's presentation is dealing with wildlife, wildlife that is all around us. Those of you who live in an environment like Woodside, it's a very unique animal. Most of us, when we think of foxes, tend to think of red foxes. But of the 12 species of foxes that are found worldwide, the gray fox is very unique for many reasons. And our presenter this evening, Bill from the Urban Gray Fox Project, will be presenting us their wonderful story and talking about their uniqueness and what makes them so special. Bill has been doing this for many years. He's observed and recorded the behavior in a non-invasive way in order to not create an undue stress on these animals. But remember, you never want to approach a wild animal because for your safety and for theirs, it's better just to watch them from afar, as I'm sure Bill will agree with. So when we think of foxes, as I mentioned, we tend to think of the red fox, which was introduced from Europe. And of the 4 species that are found in North America, gray fox, again, very unique. And when we think about foxes and their interaction with cultures and the environment, it's interesting that in many Aboriginals or Native culture, the fox is part of their mythic systems. And with the fox is usually the guide that takes a young person from one phase of life to another. So hopefully this evening with Bill's presentation, you'll have that opportunity to experience that lifestyle of this fantastic gray fox. So without further ado, I would like to share with you Bill's presentation. So Bill, are you there?
I am. Yes, yes. And I can't express it enough how much I'm honored by this invitation to be able to present to the people some of the things that I know about the gray fox, or I think I know. Sometimes they throw something at me that contradicts what I think I know. And it's always a moving target, a moving, evolving kind of being with these gray foxes. So, I don't know what else to say except
Why don't we have you start your presentation so people can begin to learn more about this fascinating neighbor here.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is what I call a year with the urban gray fox. And about 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, maybe 6 years ago, people started calling me the fox guy. And I've been at this job. It's not a job, it's a pleasure to be able to study the gray fox. Uroscience cinereo argenteus townsendi.
What do you do? Change the microphone, or try to.
And I'm trying to get this to move to the next slide, but it doesn't seem to be going there. There we go. Anyway, so I'm going to give you a little bit of an orientation before we dig into the specifics of the gray fox and some of the stories that I am going to tell. Some of the urban gray fox is a little bit different from the wild gray fox in just this way. The urban gray fox grows up in an environment where people are present. For instance, one of the usual places where you can find a gray fox is on golf courses that are bordered by maybe a creek, like down in South San Jose. There's one such place as that. Those gray foxes are much more apparent. They come out of the brush. As a matter of fact, when I first started this project, I was told stories about that from one of the maintenance crew members of the Palo Alto golf course. And the urban foxes would wait for the golfers to leave their carts and to go out on the green. And at that moment, the gray foxes would come and snatch any food that was left in the cart and run out across the green with the lunch in their mouth.
How do I get the voice?
The wild ones, you would never see that happen. They know that you're coming along a trail like Windy Hill Trail. They know you're coming long before you ever know they're there. And they back off into the woods, into the brush, and let you walk by. And when you're past and safely past, they will then continue with whatever they were doing. The gray fox versus the red fox, most people get these confused when they don't know the details of them. And so the gray fox has a black tip on its tail. The red fox, no matter what color that red fox might be, because red foxes can go from silver or pure white to black, but they always have a white tip on their tail. That's the way you can tell the difference. And a lot of people call the gray fox pups, young ones, baby foxes, kits. In England, they call them cubs. Because they're canines, I call them pups. And so that's what I'm going to refer to them as. And as far as their presence, they're called crepuscular, not nocturnal. They're active at dawn and dusk. They have a few hours in there that they stay in touch, but then they go to sleep during the day when we're up and about. But they don't sleep for a whole long period of time like we do. Instead, they nap more like a cat. And as a matter of fact, when I first began this project, I saw that they were more cat-like than they were dog-like. So I called them the feline, or the canine that acts like a feline. Monogamous. Well, they tend to be monogamous. the pair tends to be together for their lives. But that's not always the case, because in places where the population of the gray foxes is dense, there are divorces that happen in the gray fox community. And I have personally seen one of those divorces happen, where one of the males decided to leave his mate and go off with another female. And that's just the way it was. The cultural reputation, the Pitt River people, they see the fox as a benevolent god, a benevolent, it brings good things to the tribe. The Blackfeet see it as the fox that stole fire. And in the West, we have a Greek myth of one of the gods that stole fire and brought it to the people. Aesop probably influenced the Western world more than any other writer when it comes to foxes. One of his stories is The Fox and the Crow. In that story, Fox has gone hungry for a long period of time, and Crow comes in flying into and lands on a branch above. And Fox looks up and sees, whoa, look at that, look at that. That crow has a bit of cheese in its beak. And Fox says, hey, Crow, Mr. Crow, you have the most incredible voice in all of the bird kingdom. You are the finest there is. Would you sing me a song? Please, please sing me a song. And Crow at first kind of goes, that's not the way it's supposed to be. But Fox insists that Crow sing. And so after a bit, Crow says, well, maybe this fox is right. So I'll sing for it. And he opens his beak to sing, and the cheese falls from his mouth to the ground. And Fox goes over and snatches up the piece of cheese and says, thank you, Mr. Crow. Beware of those who flatter you. And now we get into some really unique pieces of the gray fox. The gray foxes are the most evolutionarily are basal, representing a more ancient lineage than wolves, coyotes, jackals, South American canids, other foxes, including the odd bat-eared foxes of Africa and the raccoon dogs of Eurasia. This is Dr. Ben Sachs at UC Davis who sent me that information. And as you can see on this chart here, the gray fox is at the base. They are the origins. They are the basal canid of all of these that go above. And so what we're talking about here is a gray fox, is that the gray fox cannot interbreed with any other foxes or any other canids. It has been traced to be, on the average, about genetically speaking, about 10 million years old. That's older than the coyote, that's older than the wolf, that's older than all of the other ones. And its origin is in Southern California. And that might explain the island fox. I'm not going to go there, but that might explain the island fox. And so, since they cannot interbreed with any other canid, if you see a gray fox out in the wild, out in the brush, out in the bush, anywhere, you are looking genetically at a 10 million year old animal. And so they have some really interesting behaviors. The submissive happiness. Whenever a fox comes to another fox and wants to show submission, there is tail swishing, and I mean way, way wide tail swishing, ears folded back on their head, slithering body motions, belly low to the ground, and squeaking chirps, very much as this picture depicts. And then there's the incredible fox kiss. This is a very complex feature of the behavior of the gray fox. It is a greeting performed between pups and adults, mates, or alpha gray foxes to another within the range to communicate recognition and respect. That last word is so important. This fox kiss shows respect, one for the other within the community of the gray foxes. And so here we have a video of the alpha gray fox Dark and his pup Midget. And they and Midget is greeting his dad. What a great, I mean, you can hardly beat that. Whoops. Here we go. Another feature is grooming. Halo grooming is what it's called when one fox grooms another fox. And during certain times of the year, the foxes get vermin, all kinds of vermin in their fur and in their ears. And when they get it in their ears, they become handicapped because then they cannot hear as well as they should when they need to hear prey moving at some distance away. And so they have a practice of ear cleaning. And that's what we'll see here. And that's cute. And one of her pups, and she's cleaning his ears. And that is done fairly frequently. And they do it to each other. So that pup may very well clean his mom's ears. Now, what do they sound like? Well, It's not quite a bark. And then in this case, this fox ends with a whistle. That whistle is used by the gray foxes more often than the bark. So let's hear what a gray fox sounds like. Do you hear that little whistle? Yeah, that's pretty important because we'll hear that later on when Gray wants his pups to come and feed on a rodent that he has caught. Yeah, okay, I'm going the wrong direction. Okay, their range. Well, their range in North America is pretty extensive. As you can see on the map there, we don't know why they don't live in this part of the country. It may be that this is too flat, and doesn't have enough trees, doesn't have enough cover, not enough connectivity between one area and another area and another area. Up here in this part of the country, we don't have any idea as to why. They should be there, but they aren't. So they range from up here in Ottawa, in this part, the southern part of Canada, all the way down here into Colombia and Venezuela. And they're not endangered in any way. They are, as you can see, they're everywhere. So the tools of perception become pretty important here. Here we have what we humans, our sight, we are sight oriented. 83%, hearing 11%. In contrast, the gray fox, its hearing is 45% in terms of what it uses, and only sight is 9%. They don't use their eyes very much. And sometimes that is exhibited by the fact that a mated pair may come upon its mate and run away, or hike its tail and go into a fight mode before it discovers that, oh, that's her or that's him. So hearing and smell become incredibly important for these foxes. So there's a huge contrast between the two of us. The hearing range for we humans is 20,000 hertz, and we have 6 million olfactory cells and one processing channel in our brains, in our heads. The gray fox has hearing range is 45,000 hertz. That's 2.5, or almost 2.5 more hearing ability. And the canines have 300 million olfactory cells and 2 processing channels that they process their smell through. They are living in a world that is vastly different from the world that you and I live in. And so, since hearing is so important, this is their primary ear, of course, and then they have a little flap over here on the side that's a secondary ear, and that channels ambient sounds. So how do they use all of this? This is a red fox, but it demonstrates exactly the way in which the gray fox hunts and captures food in dense, grassy environments.
It listens for the tiny sounds of its prey moving about below, but must take great care not to scare them away.
Watch how this fox uses its head, its hearing, to identify the mouse or the rodent that is under the snow nearly 4 feet below. This is an incredible, incredible computation being accomplished by this fox. Now if I can get back, there we go. That's the way they do it. They don't always hit, but when they do, they have a meal. So the annual cycle, part 1, November through January. This is the period of time when they pair up, when they get together. So both sexes bark to communicate availability. Now remember back there when we had that one barking, that bark carries for a long ways. And then the female will choose which male to accept as a mate. I've seen that happen. I've seen her reject several males and only accept one. And that was Mama Bold, which we'll talk more about a little bit later. She accepted her mate Gray. But before parenthood, there's other things that are going on. There's intimacy, they're relating, they're getting to know each other. And so this is one way in which Dark exhibits that, and that's Cute, his mate. She wants some attention given to her, and rarely does he actually give her any attention, but this time he does. That has got to be one of the most intimate moments that I have ever recorded of a pair of gray foxes. Over here now, we get into cycle 2, April through September, and the pups are growing up. They grow up very quickly. They grow up within 9 months, and they spend with their mother and father is critical to learning survival skills, including hunting, establishing the pups hierarchy. The hierarchy in the gray fox family is not a given innate kind of event. Indeed, it is learned. But before we go there, Mama Bold in this video is in labor. And we hear her in labor. Right after this first frame, these first several frames, Mama Bold ran for her den. I'm sure that the next day or at that night, she had those pups. And she normally had 5 pups. She had a big family. Once that family is established, and once the pups have gone through their period of being blind and being deaf, which ends at about 10 to 12 days, then they begin to move. And mama decides that she's going to move her natal den where they were born off somewhere else. Now, the pups have never left that natal den. And so, in a lot of ways, it's a new world for them. Can you hear her? And now she's carrying off like a cat would do, carrying her pups off to the new den. And that new den is about 300 yards from the natal den. And she carries them one by one by one from there to the new den site. She decides to take a break and have a snack. This is cached food that they have. If they don't eat all of the rabbit, like I think this is a rabbit in this case, they cache it, and then they dig it up and they eat it. And she's getting a snack tonight in the rain, because that's rain coming down on her. And she decides that she's going to get back to moving her pups. She's worked all day on this, and as you can see, it's 2:01 in the morning. And she started this whole project during the day. So she carries it off and she caches it in a new location closer to the new den. And now here she wants to get the last two of them off to the new den. But as I mentioned, they have never left their den area, and she's trying to get them to go into a new space that they've never been in before. And so this little one here decides, I don't think I want to go where mama wants to take me. And so kind of goes out there, and the other one follows suit, and they go back to the natal den, I assume. And she's probably so exasperated with their behavior that she said, well, gosh, what am I going to do? Well, she has to carry them one by one to the new den and settle everything there. And there they are, running around there. That's what they do. And that's mama. So when they first emerge, they're tiny, they're little. And so I thought, well, let's see what they're like. And that's Papa Gray. That's Gray. There are his pups. 3 of the 5. And they go walking through all these twigs and branches and so forth like that. And sometimes they stumble, and they have to learn how to navigate through that kind of territory. Let's see. How am I going to? Oops, I'm not going to go there. Okay. I'm just getting used to these keys. Usually I have somebody else do that job, but sometimes they come upon other critters that live in the area. And when they're young as pups, it's sometimes a surprise. Mr. Skunk comes in. Oh, what is that? No, look at, move. What are we going to do now? Yeah, okay, all right, all right. See how curious they are? Gray foxes have a curious, they are so curious about things. And on the other hand, they have to nurse. And as they grow up, there becomes just very little room under there, under Mama Bold. And so here we are with a nursing session. These little gray foxes with Mama Bold's crew, she nursed them longer than is listed in the publications and so forth. And so it got really crowded under her. And in this case, this little fox just decides, well, I'm gonna take a break and go have something else to eat. I don't know what it is over here, but this is the way they nurse. As I said, I'm trying to get used to these keystrokes. Okay. Gray, the master hunter. This fox, Gray, was a master hunter. He caught more things the first try than any fox I have ever seen. And so he comes in here to hand off a rodent to his pups and listen to that little whistle that he gives. As soon as I can get it on here, there we go. And that little whistle, he's calling to them, hey, come on, I got some food for you over here. And here he's just carrying I think it's a gopher. And here on this day, this evening, I saw him coming up the road carrying this Canada goose. It was a young Canada goose, but nonetheless, it was a big Canada goose. And every maybe 20 feet or so, he dropped the goose and he sat there and he panted and panted and panted until he was through. And then he picked up the fox and he walked another 20 feet or so, dropped the fox and panted, and so forth, until he dropped it in front of his 5 pups. And when that happened, he just left the scene, went off into the brush, and probably went to sleep. On the afternoon that Cute hunts his tree squirrel, that's part of what they do. They climb trees. They're the only canine well, other than the Eurasian, what's it called? There is another. It's not a fox, but and the bigger odd-bearded, big-eared fox of Africa. Those two can climb trees. The raccoon dog is what I'm trying to get at there. The raccoon dog and the big-eared fox of Africa can climb trees, but in North America, the gray fox is the only one. And they hunt up in the trees sometimes. So on this evening, I was coming into the big clearing, into the woods there where I have some trail cameras, and I looked back behind me to see if there were any foxes behind me, and sure enough, there was Cute. She was behind me, and we entered into the big clearing, which was just an area that had no trees growing in it. It was a kind of a nice big circle of open space. She had her nose in the air, and she had scented something, and she blasted off into the thicket. And I shrugged my shoulders and I said, well, okay, you know, and I went over to my trail camera, and I was tending to my trail camera, and I happened to look up, and there she was in the tree, just as you see her there. I grabbed my camera and I put on the video, and I caught the following. Now she spotted the squirrel. She's got to figure out how to get to it. Ah, look at that jump. She's up in the tree. Ah, and the squirrel, no, she fell into the thicket below. She missed. And the squirrel, yeah, that squirrel's heart must be pumping something fierce, but it's also chittering. In this one here, we have the story of Daring. Daring was a young female alpha. She was the top dog of the gray fox family, and she ruled her position by fighting. Well, one of the foxes, I don't know which one or how it all happened, but she got injured, and her hind leg was injured seriously. And so she couldn't climb trees. On a Sunday morning, I came upon the fox gray teaching his young ones how to climb at high speeds.
Here comes another.
There's four, but
Three. Now we got four. Oh, this is going to be interesting because that's Daring.
and Daring is
How
trying to
well can he
climb,
climb with three legs?
and Daring can't climb. The fight took it out of him.
Well, so Mama goes over and she kind of pays attention to him. And she knows that he can't do some of the things that a fox is supposed to be able to do.
And so the end of the story is really interesting because Daring learned a lesson. She healed up, And when she did heal up, her siblings returned to her the position of the alpha fox, and she did not rule by fear alone. And that's a pretty important piece. So establishing the hierarchy, fighting over food, that's what they do in order to establish the hierarchy. And the one that gets the most gets the top dog position. And this is the way it happens. They tussle and they tug and they pull and they fight for the food. Yeah. And they're tugging at it. So, and not always is there agreement. Sometimes there's a fight. Gray fox fights are not very long. They're brief like that. And so we come here to annual cycle 3, December, November, December. They have to disperse, the young do. They have to get out of their home range, go establish their own. It's almost like teenagers wanting to get out of the house and get out from underneath mom and dad. And so in this case, Pale, which was Mama Bold's daughter, Mama Bold Gray's daughter, had gone off, had dispersed, but she came back. She and Mama, Pale and Mama, had a very good relationship with one another. That's Pale coming in to say hello to Mama, and that's Gray right there. And so Gray decides to leave the scene and let Pale and Mama be. Pale teams up with Blackie. And Blackie is an interesting little male. I can't go into all about him, but what happened was that when they teamed up, Gray chased them out. He told them in no uncertain terms that they could not live in the home range any longer, and they both left. So in my epilogue, as you can see here, science has clearly shown that we gray foxes and other animals that inhabit the night are not hardwired automatons running through the thickets that you humans call instinct. We are sentient beings, thinking, feeling, conscious. We are aware of our future. We think much like you. We show, I can't read that, for one another. We are sometimes jealous because one pup has more attention given. There are times when we are happy, while at other times we mourn our loss. Because we are in such proximity to you, we lose our food supply and our homes because your fellow human beings fail to understand our needs and our lives Instead of destroying our habitats, our corridors, our ancient natal dens, please help to preserve these regions and treat us with respect. In return, we will be a boon to the ecosystem as we work to keep it healthy for both humans and wildlife alike. Respectfully, Squat the Elder. Thank you. For more information, you can go to the Urban Wildlife Research Project.com. And so I guess we're ready to take on any questions that were posed during the course of the evening.
Yes, we have some questions, but first of all, I just want to thank you again, Bill. And as we deal with the questions, people will have the opportunity to record the information that's on the screen now if they wish to get further involved with the Urban Wildlife Research Project. Now, the first question comes from Shannon, and it's a question that probably many people are interested in. And how do the foxes react to you being there? Do not know that you're filming? Are you camouflaged? Are you in a blind?
That is a very, very good question, because it goes back to the beginning of when I first came across these foxes. I sat on one side of an old dirt road out there at the Palo Alto Baylands, and they were in the bushes on the other side of the road. That's where I learned that they have this incredible, incredible curiosity. And they would watch me watching them. And I started taking notes. To make a long story short, they came to trust me. And the young ones in generation number 2 would come out on the road and just look at me sitting there on a stump and taking these notes and paying attention to what they were doing. It became trust. And so now as it goes together, I have learned how to establish that trust, and the foxes seem to respond. And so you can see that picture in the background there with Limos and Big Eyes sitting on that fallen tree branch. And those two foxes at first were so skittish that you could hardly even be in their presence. And now they're pretty comfortable with me being around.
Fantastic. Now, people are also interested in knowing, what are their predators?
Oh, well, they have a number of predators. They have like puma, which we normally call mountain lion. They have coyote, they have bobcat, they have eagles, and the hawks will sometimes try to take out a pup if they can manage, which in some cases they can. So those are the main ones that prey on the foxes. And right now we have a pair of coyotes out at the Baylands, and that presents the gray foxes that live out there with a kind of a problem. But the solution is that the gray foxes can climb the trees, which the coyotes can't. And so that's part of their cover. Their cover is staying in the brush, staying with trees, so that they can climb if they need to escape, a predator.
Great. And then people are also interested in knowing, what is the size difference, and is it significant between a male and a female gray fox?
Oh, on the whole, okay, the female gray fox tends to be a little bit smaller than the male, but I have seen where females are bigger than their mate, the male. And so it doesn't always hold that the females are smaller. In the case of Limos and Big Eyes back here in this scene, I don't know if you can see that or not, but anyway, those two, Big Eyes is a little bit smaller than Limos.
And then what about their lifespan? Mark was wondering, what is the lifespan of a typical gray fox in the wild?
In the wild, they live to be 8, 9 years old. And in captivity, though, they can live up to 15 years old.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Now, is it legal to have a fox as a pet?
Oh, you don't want to have a fox as a pet. Let me put it first and foremost right there. They're wild animals, and people have had gray foxes as pets, but they can't keep them in the house. Like some people will make a pet of a red fox, and usually that's when they find them as really young, small foxes, and they raise them. Okay, the red fox is a little bit different. I mean, I've seen some cases where the red fox fits in just like a normal dog would. But the gray fox is not quite that amenable to being housed. Yeah.
Now, I used to live in Alaska, and there were many small islands where red foxes were bred for the fur industry. Has the gray fox been used in the fur industry?
Yes, it has. And mostly on the East Coast, they have those kinds of pens. But the fur of the gray fox is not worth very much. So that whole market is not really viable anymore, at least at this point. And there's a trend within furriers and people who use fur for coats and things like that to step away from using wildlife in that manner. Artificial fur can work just as well.
Of course. Now, we have a question from Nancy. She wants to know, do foxes have scent glands? How do you keep track of who's who among the many foxes that you observe?
Oh, yeah, they do have scent glands, and that's pretty interesting. They have scent glands on their feet, on their cheeks, and I don't know of anywhere else, but they probably do have scent glands elsewhere. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of a research study that was done up in the Santa Cruz Mountains up here, having to do with scent. The puma, mountain lions, will scrape. They will scratch the ground with their paws. And when they do, they leave their scent in the scrape there. And that's part of the reason why they do that, to announce that they have been there and they're in the area and they're present. The gray fox has learned that if they wallow in that scrape, they take on the scent of the puma. And by so doing, the coyote will not bother them, or any other prey that will not bother them. They kind of take on a camouflage. And what was the second part of that question?
They were asking, how do you tell one fox from another?
Oh, that's so difficult. Oh, I sometimes get them mixed up. but mainly I can keep the differences in, like, for instance, here we have Big Eyes and Limos. Can the audience see these two?
They're behind you. They'll be small, but go
Yeah,
ahead.
okay. All right. So one of the ways I can know the difference between these two is that Limos is a darker male. His facial features are darker than hers. And so I can tell that she also has a trot when she trots that is different from his. And so I can tell the difference, like in front of trail cameras at night. Sometimes, not always, I can tell the difference by the way in which she trots and he trots. So there are characteristics about them that distinguish one from another.
Okay, and our last question that we have time for this evening, Kathleen asked that she's seen 2 foxes in her backyard in Mountain View and assumes they're going for rabbits, and asks, is there anything we should do about that?
Are the rabbits in cages? Or, just exactly what is the situation? If they are wild rabbits, then just let them be. If you have tame rabbits, keep them caged. And if you have kittens, keep them out of the way. Keep them inside, because the fox will prey on them.
Well, Bill, I want to thank you again for giving us this wonderful view into these very fascinating creatures, the foxes, and I wish you continuing good luck with your organization. And we appreciate so much that you were able to join us this evening. Now, everyone who's still with us, I want to remind you that this is the first Friday brought to you by the Woodside Arts and Culture Committee here in the beautiful town of Woodside. And we do this every first Friday of the month. We're a volunteer organization trying to support our community by providing interesting presentations like we've just been fortunate enough to enjoy with Bill. Now, February, we have a very unusual presentation because we've had many award-winning presenters who have won all kinds of awards, but next month, we have a presenter who has received an award of $1 million. We're talking about Tyler McNiven, who won The Amazing Race with a friend of his. So remember to tune in next month, where we'll get a wonderful presentation from Tyler about his experiences with The Amazing Race and taking over his family's restaurant, very famous here in Woodside, Buck's Restaurant. So we hope that you will tune in for that. And I'd like to end this evening with a little quote, and that is from an author who wrote Little Foxes, where he said, "But you must never forget, you become responsible forever for what you have tamed." And so this evening, we've been quite fortunate enough to enjoy a presentation about something wild, and hopefully they will never be tamed and they will continue to be wild and enjoy their environment. So
Yes. Mm-hmm.
thank you all for joining us this evening. So remember, same bat time, same bat channel next month and February. So thank you all. Stay healthy, stay well, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks again, Bill.
Okay, thank you.